There we are. We are live. Hello, everyone. Making sure we're in the right group.
Yeah.
Okay. We are so excited to be able to do Sweet Regency Ramblings again. And let me check the group to make sure we are in the right one. Pretty sure we are. Says it. Okay. I think this is it. Yep. All right. So for Sweet Regency Ramblings, today we are going to discuss why Regency. That is the topic. So it's just going to be conversation about why we love Regency and why we think it's the best genre in the world and why it should just last forever. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll just ask this first question. So let's start off with why we each started writing Regency and why we chose to write Regency. Just go ahead and shout out your answer.
Bill it. So who?
Anyone choose somebody. How about I'll start.
Yes.
Okay. So I, from a very young age, when I was like, I don't know how old I was super young, and I used to hide behind my parents' couch when my dad would watch the Laurence Olivier Pride and Prejudice, and I loved it. And it's not like crazy accurate, but that's okay. They did the best they could for back then. But I loved the whole idea of Elizabeth Bennet and stuff. And so I wanted, ever since then, I have just clung to that love of the Regency era. And then I watched more and more and more. And I write it because when I was growing up, there wasn't a whole lot that I could find. And so I wanted to share more of that with the world. And plus, there's just nothing like it. And it just makes me happy thinking about living back then. And I live vicariously through my characters. And it's just seriously the best. Okay, who's next? Martha, I choose you.
Okay, great. I write Regency because, so for a long time, I feel like I was in college for like my whole life. But when I was in college, I felt like the only, I had to, if I was going to read, I had to be reading like material for my classes. But those times when I did get a break and got to read what I wanted, I always wanted to read Georgette Heyer. She was introduced as an author to me by my mom, who's, my grandma introduced her to my mom. So she's somebody that's well loved in my extended family. And so I would just turn to her anytime I had time for fiction reading, just for kind of escape. And I loved, it was kind of my first, like the first time I felt like history came alive. Like I had never enjoyed history, but when I started reading Georgette Heyer, it brought history to life for me. And so when I started thinking about writing a book, just all the ideas that came to my head were set in the Regency era. And so yeah, that's why I started it, because it's the time I feel like there's so much, it has a lot of structure to it. Like you have a lot of rules, but they can make for some really exciting situations. And so it's a nice challenge. So that's why I like writing Regency.
I love that. Because I think that's the truth for all of us, that it just brings history alive, because it's just so much more realistic than like all the other time periods. I'm sure it has to do with part of our research and how much research we put into it, but it's still like there's just something that just makes it come alive in the Regency era. It's so true.
Yeah.
Who's next? Casey or Jenny? You guys have to decide now.
Uh-oh. Casey,
Jenny
you.
can go.
Oh, okay. I'll go.
Okay.
Well, I did start reading Austen when I was a teenager. So, I read all of the books from Jane Austen and I loved them. And, there wasn't yet the... I'm hearing an echo.
Sorry, go ahead. I turned it off.
It was me. I have my own echo. And there wasn't yet the Colin Firth Pride and Prejudice. I know, I'm so old. That came, she's the same age as, I'm actually the same age as the Elizabeth from Pride and Prejudice. So anyway, so that didn't come until I was, in my like young adult or whatever. But just love the books. I had never heard of Georgette Heyer, but do you pronounce it Hare? You pronounce it Hare, but how is it pronounced?
It is hair, I believe.
Oh,
Say, I've only ever heard of Hare.
all this time I've been saying hi.
You know,
in my
I
head. Hair, like hair. Okay.
I said higher too.
So I had never heard of her. I used to love reading Anthony Trollope, which is, kind of similar. And I was really surprised at how much I loved Elizabeth Gaskell, which of course is later. But I didn't really make a distinction between all the eras and everything like that at that time. And when I moved to France, and I was, so this is about 10 years. Well, I moved to France 15 years ago or something, but 10 years ago, my British friend here handed me my first Hare, and I was just absolutely hooked. I just could not believe, and I'd always sort of been a little bit of a literary snob, like, oh, romance, it's like poo-poo or whatever, but I just thought she was so brilliant, and I guess it combined two loves. It combined the love that I had already had for historical literature, and with this wit and humor, and I thought, wow. And so I started writing it because, I read all the books, and then there were no more, and I didn't know about you guys. Mm-hmm. I was like, well, I want more of that. So I started writing to try to get the kind of books that I wanted to read. So that's how I started writing it. And yes, I love it. I'm totally my husband knows if we go to a dinner party, just don't get me started on the topic.
I think we can all do that. Just talk for 3 hours.
That's why we're here.
Exactly. That is literally why we are here. What about you, Casey?
So my story is similar. I mean, my granny was like a crazy Georgette. I've always called her Georgette Heyer. So I recently learned it was Hare, and I have the hardest saying the right one. But so she gave me Sense and Sensibility one year when I was a teenager for my birthday, and I refused to read it for whatever reason. And then she had me sit down and watch the BBC Pride and Prejudice with her once at her house, and I was hooked. So I read the books, and then she showed me Georgette Heyer, and I just I loved her. I love her storylines, but I love the world she's created, and I love characters, and I love her wit, and Jane Austen's wit. I laugh out loud in her books, and so I think that which one of us hasn't always been a storyteller in some way, right? Maybe. Mm-hmm. So when I sat down and thought, maybe I'll try writing a book. Who said no?
Martha.
I never thought about writing until literally a few years ago. I was like, okay, sure.
That blows my mind. How I don't understand that.
Well, because you're so good.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed writing. I kept a blog and stuff, but it just never crossed my mind to attempt writing fiction. And then actually I read a book, and it was a Regency. I won't name it, but I was like, I could do better than this. And so I started trying to write, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really hard. I could not do better than this. So it was NaNoWriMo. It was National Novel Writing Month. And I was like, sure, why not? I just quit my job to do photography full time. And I was like, oh, I'll give it a shot. And then I was like, wow, it's not easy to write a book, folks. So that's where I got my start. But I had never thought of doing it before then. So
that's crazy. Mindy just commented and said, I'm with you, Martha. I was late to the game too. So
story of my life. Always late to the game.
That's just so crazy to me, because I just don't, I don't know, because I've always wanted to write, and I've always loved it. So I love hearing the different times when people get into the writing, because it really doesn't matter when you start. It just totally depends on your love of the writing and the storytelling and stuff, because it's just, there's something ingrained in us, I think, that wants to share that. That's so interesting. What were you going to say, Jenny? Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, and I don't remember if I said this somewhere here in this forum somewhere, but I think I've only done live on my book club. Oh, maybe I said it there. But anyway, if I'm repeating myself, I'm so sorry. But I started with a blog as well, like Martha. And I had tried to write earlier. Like we lived in Africa, my husband and I, on a humanitarian mission. And I was like, oh, this is the time. So I wrote like 10 chapters and my husband was like, yeah, but nothing's happening. And so I tried like to write a fantasy novel after that. I was like dabbling and it just never came together. So I thought, okay, all I can write is a blog post. That's like as much as I can do. And a lot of times people would say, oh, you should write a memoir because, when they would read my blog and like a lot of my experiences, I was like, oh, no, I can't. And so when I did finally write a memoir, I put it in a file folder that was called Final Attempt, because I was like, if I can't pull this off, I will never write another book again. So that's how I started my writing career. I started with I started with a blog and then a memoir. And then I was like, wow, I want to keep writing, but I already told my own story. So what am I going to tell? And I wanted to write Regency, but I was too afraid. So I wrote a contemporary that is just like a Regency. There's like a titled person and, it's set in France, which is totally, and it's like a lot like a Regency, but it's a modern day Regency. And then I was like, okay, let me just take the plunge. And, and I actually fan lettered, not to like totally monopolize, but I actually sent a fan letter to Carla Kelly. And I was like, I said in the title of the email, I was like, I've been dropping a lot of blunt on your books, and I told her that I wanted to write a Regency, but I was too afraid. And she said, you can do it. And I was like, oh, Carla Kelly said I can do it. Okay, I can do it. And I actually did it.
That's so awesome. I love that. It's amazing what just a little bit of encouragement can do for us, like for everyone, but like for writers, it's like I don't know about for all of you, four, including me. I'm like, when I get encouragement, like I'm like, oh, I am so awesome. I can totally do this. And then when I don't, I'm like, nope, I quit. I'm not doing this anymore.
Totally.
So yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
There's another comment. Valerie Sharp said, I hated English in school, so I will only be a reader. We love readers.
Yes, we do.
Readers.
So that's wonderful. We're so happy you're a reader. Let's see. How did you get started, Casey? You've always wanted to write, right? Or not?
I used to write these cool stories in middle school that I someday get published, and I illustrated them myself, and they were horrible. and I can't find them. I wish I could, so I could show you guys how terrible they are. But no, I have a really good friend from high school who was always just telling me to write a book. We used to read together a lot. We are that cool. And she would just tell me to write a book. And she's the one who told me about NaNoWriMo, which is writing a book in a month. And I told her no, because that was insane. And then just like you, Martha, I read a book and I was like, something in the book kind of pulled me out of it. And I was like, I could do this. And then I tried it. And that it was so hard. Like, it was so much harder than I was expecting it to be. And then I wrote a bunch of books. But those first few will never see the light of day. Like, they are
See, that's what I should have done with my book.
The same thing. I published mine, and they're still out there.
I know. I'm like, I'm gonna pull my first ones from Amazon because I'm like, no thanks.
That was smart, Casey.
Yes.
Well, yeah. We probably all feel that way about our beginning writing, because the more you work at something, the better you get, right?
Yeah.
Theoretically.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know, right? I think so.
Well, and also I think getting critique, that was just like it was eye-opening. I got such good critiques, and it made me see, okay, because especially one friend, Java Fixon, I just love her. She wrote Fairchild. I don't know if any of you have read that, but she just took my words and made them better. And I was like, oh, so that's how you make my words better, because when you read someone else's book, you're like, oh, that person's a genius. And then it stops there, But when someone takes your words and fixes them, you're like, wow, okay. So that's how it's supposed to look. So anyway, I think that helps too,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mindy says, I don't. Mine was awesome. Of course, Mindy, your first book was awesome. No one would ever say otherwise.
Aren't you supposed to be
Marilee,
working on your book right now, Mindy?
Isn't that what she told us?
Yes.
We did.
let's see, Marilee, I think I'm saying that right. She has a question. Do you read all the reviews for your books, or do you stay away so you won't see any negative ones? We have this conversation quite a lot in our
Yeah.
author community
Mhm.
about reviews, and yeah, so I think it's different for everyone, for every author probably. And I think it also depends on how thick our skin is at that moment. Because like I know for me, sometimes I'm like, I can handle anything, and I go and read my negative reviews, and sometimes you can really take some of the feedback they give and like, okay, I can see that, and I'll work on that in my next book. And then other times when people are just kind of being, when I don't agree with other reviews, negative reviews, then I'm like, I should not have read that. That's kind of disappointing. But then you go to your positive reviews and you feel better. And then you go to your author friends or your readers or whatever, and then you get that encouragement we were talking about before. So yeah, I think it depends on I think it depends on every author's. What about you guys? Do you stay away or do you read them all?
I'm not strong enough to stay away. Like, I wish I could, but I wouldn't say like that I read all of my reviews, but I'll go and like scan some of them. And then like you said, Deborah, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, like, I'm good. Like that's, it doesn't affect me too much. And then other times I'm like, I need to quit. I should never write again, like, so it just depends on like kind of the headspace that I'm in, how it affects me. But I, like you guys know these authors that like, I have a Pinterest board that I go to when I'm like, when I get down about like the reviews that I've read, and I'm just like, just to remind me like what I'm trying to do as an author, that, and that it's a process, like it's a growing process and everything. So yeah, just kind of depends.
Yeah.
Yep.
You guys agree? Have anything else to say? Nothing? Okay.
What do you read the reviews, Casey? I'm trying
No,
not
I
to talk.
disagree. Well, no, I
That's
agree.
just fine.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it depends. I like how you said it's not how thick our skin is, but it's how thick it is that day. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you can take critiques, and especially if they're worded kindly. I've
Yes.
definitely taken like nicely worded reviews and gone back and made changes, or it's changed the way I've thought about how I write. Totally.
Yeah.
But, some reviews, I just have to put those away and not read them again, because it can be like really hurtful.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be like detrimental to your writing. Like it's like, oh, because you work so dang hard on these books and you put your heart and soul into them. And no matter what people say, if like, well, this author didn't research much or this author didn't think about this, it's like, no, we did.
Yeah. Well,
Just
you want me
get
to
the
show you
point.
my research books?
Exactly. You want to sit next to me as I write for 9 straight hours a day and watch my work process and watch me cry over these stupid characters that aren't cooperating and everything else.
And aren't real,
Yeah.
but they are to me.
Exactly. There is another comment, Kathy Jo Perry. She says, there are readers like me who can't stand negative reviews. That's why we love you, Kathy Jo. The ones that tear the authors apart really tick me off. Thank you. That is what we love. Because like anything negative, we're like, okay, like we've said before, it's you can take the things that are constructive and take it and learn, or there are other things that are just meant to tear authors down, I feel like. So yes, we love readers like you, Kathy Jo. You go by Kathy. I keep on calling you Kathy Jo. I know who you are, by the way. She's a great reviewer. Carol Tyler says, I think you all are awesome writers. Oh, that's very
Thank
nice.
you.
We think you're awesome too. And Lori Spader says, do you ever go back and read your stories after you publish them? I do not. I can't.
It's so hard. It's hard not to read them. And then like I listened to one of my audiobooks after it came out, and the whole time I was listening to it, I was editing it in my head, how I would have reframed those sentences or added description or, and that's just, it's too hard.
Yep. And if you go through one passage, you're like, oh my gosh, there are like 17 things to fix in this one paragraph. Then you're like, because I tried going back over my earlier books and I got through maybe 3 chapters. And by the end, I was like, I am the worst writer in the world. How could I have published this? And so, yeah, it's not good. It's not conducive to that.
Nope.
Let's see. Marilee says, it makes me sad when people leave really mean reviews. Totally unnecessary. As we said, we agree.
Well, I think, for the negative reviews, I think sometimes, like Casey said, they can be really constructive and you can read them and say, oh, yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
Okay. And you don't make the same mistake again. So it's not that, I think, at least for me, it's not that I'd never want a negative review. Also, it does make the book a little bit more authentic, because if you have, just all 5-star reviews, people think, okay, you got all your friends to review your book. And then, here you like there's like other people reading or whatever.
Or the book is just that awesome.
Oh,
I know. That's what I'm like, hey, I'd be fine with all 5-star reviews.
That's never happened to me. But oddly enough, and I was just saying this earlier today, sometimes really like a string of really positive reviews can make me want to go under the covers. And I don't know why I feel so vulnerable. Maybe because I feel like, oh, I don't deserve this. I don't know if you guys have that, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I just, so it
Like
really,
imposter syndrome.
what's that?
Like imposter syndrome, where you're like,
where I'm just like, okay.
they're going to figure out that I'm not as awesome as they think I am.
The next book, just wait, they'll see how horrible I really am. I'm never going to pull this off again. Yeah.
It wasn't as good as the first book, but no, which is fine, which is fair.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. All right. Why do you think the Regency writing, why do you think the whole genre has lasted for so long? So I've heard some people say that, oh, the Regency genre, it's like it's a hot topic now, but in a few years it'll fade out. But like, do you guys think that's true, or do you think it'll stay forever? Why do you think it's so popular? And yeah, Casey, you're shaking your head already. I want to hear.
It's never gonna die, you guys. It's the best genre out there. I don't know. Look at Georgia Ayer. Okay, so she's been writing since what, the 20s, and has it ever died out? So, and I don't know. There's something that's so amazing about the Regency era, where it's like this snapshot time period in between like the Georgian and the Victorian, where they had like all these rules, and like I love so much about the society as like how everything was so proper, but like I don't know how to word this. Someone else jump in. But I love their rules. And it changed in the Victorian and it was different in the Georgian. So we had that like 20 period where it was like, and the fashion was so much better in the Regency era. That 20 years is the best of the 1800s. I'm just saying.
Totally agree.
Yes, you cannot fit a flat screen TV under your skirt,
No.
Yeah.
No, they didn't have to deal with all that extra stuff, and it just looked so classy.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody says, let's see, Shaylin Maxwell says, I hope it stays forever. Totally. Yeah. And Mindy Strunk says, the Regency era was the perfect storm. It's true. Was that a typo, Mindy? Just kidding. No, I totally agree. Everything you said too, Casey. There's something timeless about it. And I think that Jane Austen made it timeless. Like, I think the reason why it was so romantic and the rules and the structure and like everything, it's just a romantic feel to it. But I feel like Jane Austen totally capitalized on the whole romance of the whole entire thing. And so to think of her type of stories to no longer be relevant in society, to have other people not want to read more like that, or to have people no longer want to write like that, I just don't ever see it happening.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, though, if Jane Austen had lived at another time period, I don't know, medieval or something, and had written the same way, I think we would all be big medieval fans or something. I think she brought her whole life, it's like magic out of her life. And so we all live it through her, so I do agree that she had a lot to do with it. But, yes, it is that, 9-year period that's like the perfect storm, that's but I do think that Jane Austen probably could have pulled off any era and made it magical and made people want to write in that era. But anyway,
I think it's like, sorry, go ahead.
No, I already spoke.
Well, I was just gonna say, I feel like there's this built-in tension to the era because of the rules, like it lends itself really well to clean romance, actually. I know there's a huge steamy genre within Regency, but because there were these really kind of rigid rules about how men and women could interact, there's this tension there that, like, the simplest touch can be so meaningful, and that's just not something that exists in many other eras. And then just the fact of having the Prince Regent, who is such a like quirky, strange like person, I think he had such a huge influence over society, for good or ill, and it just makes for such a unique era to write in. But I think that built-in tension is a lot of it, and partially why it's so fun to write, because there's just like anytime you have to figure out ways to get your characters together alone, and that's not easy. But if they can share these really seemingly like subtle interactions that just mean so much more because of the time period.
Yeah.
That's so true. So true. I love it. That's so true.
I think also. Oh, sorry. I also, I know, okay, a lot of you guys and a lot of the readers who grew up in Utah were probably everything so all-American and wholesome. But when I went to college, it was a little bit like Animal House, that movie from the 70s, and like all the guys, the fraternity guys would wear like shorts and construction boots in the winter and, like crash beer against their head and everything. And there's just something so tempting about gentlemen who look like gentlemen and who act like gentlemen. And I think that there's also something, no matter where we are, I think that's something we as women long for, and also the reticence, in an age where there's reality TV and people just like put it all out there and are just as raw, and it's not necessarily refined. And so I think there's something attractive to what Regency offers, where people are their best. Never mind all the social problems of, all the other, we'll just pretend that didn't exist.
Yeah.
That's the Regency.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Well, they had okay, we can just go, but I just want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
And also, I did not grow up in Utah. I grew up in California. Thank you very much.
You were like,
but I love Utah. I did live there for a while. Okay. Anyway, they had like values as a whole, and like everybody broke rules sometimes, but it's just, I think that part of the reason why clean or sweet readers love it so much is because just like you have this built-in value system, which is just kind of amazing when you really think about it. But okay, we can move on now. Stop. I could talk about this all day, you guys.
Couldn't we though? Okay, let's see. I'm not gonna say this name right. Michaela, I think it lasts because it's idealistic of what people want in romance, fashion, etiquette, and entertainment. Absolutely. Yeah. Mindy says everything just came together to make it so awesome. Very true. Valerie Sharp says, yes, clean romance works so well in the era, though I made the mistake once in not knowing they weren't all clean. Yikes. Yes, it's very true. And Kathy Jill said, I was born in Utah and moved to California when I was 10. Look at that. Hey. And then she asks, what is your favorite? This will be the last question because we have like 2 minutes left. What's your favorite trope within the Regency genre? Ooh. Mine would have to be, I think mine's Marriage of Convenience. Because there's,
I love that.
Yeah, there's just nothing that has that tension that a Marriage of Convenience has, in my opinion.
Well, you can get your characters together alone so much
easier.
Married. And the tension, man.
Oh, I know. I love it. What about you guys?
Well, I'm writing a Marriage of Convenience, and I didn't think about that. I find it very, very hard to write. So that's not my favorite. But my favorite, probably the kind of the arrogant, not rake, but that softens at the end. I kind of like that because he meets a headstrong girl. I like that.
Yeah, those are good. Martha Casey?
Enemies to lovers. That's my favorite always.
I'm the same way. I love the witty banter that Enemies to Lovers produces, and Georgette was so good at that. I say her name like we're best friends, Georgie and I. I really do love it. But I love Marriage of Convenience too. It's there's so many any good ones, but
There you go.
enemies to lovers for me.
Yeah.
Yes, they're all good.
Yes, for sure. Okay, a few more comments. Mindy says, plus I read it in high school, which high school guys are the farthest things from the Regency men. So of course all girls are going to dream of Darcy instead of the loser who sits next to you in English class.
Yes.
It's true.
Yep.
So true.
And Kathy Jo says, I love Marriage of Convenience too. It's my favorite too. Yes. And then Shaylin says, I love reading all of these romance books, but honestly, if a real guy ever said some of the lines from these books, I would probably laugh. And Michaela says, yes, witty banter makes books so enjoyable. Yes, if only we could all be as witty as Georgette and Jane.
Yeah.
If only. That's what we all aspire to. One day we'll eventually get there when we're dead. All right. I think those are the last of the comments, and we are at 30 minutes, so we should probably end. Does anybody else have anything to say to end?
Long live the Regency.
Yes.
It will never die.
Alrighty. Okay, thank you everyone so much for joining us. This has been so fun. We're so excited to have so many comments and questions. It always makes it more entertaining and more exciting when everybody joins in. Next week, we'll have another sweet Regency Ramblings, and we will announce the topic next week. So hopefully you join us then. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.